Christopher Friedel here with Texas Blockchain Council. We're here at Consensus. We've got Elliot with the Sustainable Bitcoin Protocol. And kind of run through what you guys have going on, how you're helping miners, how you're helping the industry.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Chris. It's always great to chat with you. A lot of really exciting progress updates across the Bitcoin mining industry. I know it might seem like doom and gloom in the news and the media and Congress, but we're seeing increasing adoption of sustainable energy practices by Bitcoin miners. We had a pretty exciting announcement today with Crusoe Energy.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
You want to share it with everybody?
Yeah, sure. Basically, we will be piloting the first ever waste gas methodology in Bitcoin mining. So we all know that Bitcoin mining has this really powerful potential to mitigate methane emissions, which are really, really bad for the environment. But never before has there really been a methodology developed to quantify and then monetize this activity. Because, Bitcoin mining is so new. I mean, Crusoe sort of is one of the pioneers behind waste gas mining. Nobody's ever been able to do this before. So we'll be working with them to help them monetize the activity, issue them the SBC, which is our, market-based instrument.
And is that, when are you looking at issuing that?
So the SBC already exists. We've worked with miners like CleanSpark already through our, pilot transaction today.
With
Crusoe, with, Cully, Chase, Hugh,
sorry, I'm
Sarah,
like
team.
for a first day.
No worries. Man, the Crusoe team is really phenomenal. Like, what they've built is so incredible. But yeah, we're hoping to do it soon. Right now, we're kind of finalizing. We finalized the methodology, and now we actually just have to apply it. So we'll be going off some test sites, using a third-party auditor to basically measure, what are the positive climate impacts of this activity, and then we'll be able to monetize this activity and also bridge Bitcoin mining with institutional investors or really anybody that cares about the climate. So telling the story that Bitcoin miners are doing this positive service for the world, that's our service. That's our bread and butter.
Yeah. So what are you seeing on the audit side? What are they typically looking for there?
Yeah, it's fascinating. So with conventional energy sources, whether they be fossil or renewable, there's already accounting mechanisms to determine whether or not something is clean, not clean. What does clean energy procurement look like, whether it be a REC or a PPA, what have you. Because this technology is so novel, it's so new, there literally does not exist an accounting convention. So on the flip side, though,
So everybody's making it up as they go along.
So yeah, we're kind of like building, I hate to use the term, but building the plane as we fly it.
Yeah.
But so we're going to be working with a third party that can use various, whether they be sensor instruments, IoT, even satellite data. The Environmental Defense Fund is launching a satellite, I believe next year, that's going to be able to have granular methane emissions data across, oil fields. So we'll be basically showing this is what the methane emissions were before, or this is what the average emissions is for a particular oil field or basin. We now throw on some Bitcoin miners onto the flare stack. We're avoiding those methane emissions. We can calculate the delta, and that'll tell us how much CO2 equivalents we're actually reducing. So I know that in 2022, Crusoe, for example, I think they mitigated something like 500,000 tons of CO2 equivalents just by reducing methane emissions in these oil fields.
It really is. The amount of work that they put into the space. And I think Coley was running through at the Empower conference, running through what, all of the measurements that they used, the miles on the trucks that they're doing, just the granularity of all the data that they're putting together over there is it's impressive.
Yeah, they're like data scientists. I mean, Chase, Cully, the whole team, they're incredibly sophisticated. And actually, one of the benefits of applying this technology to the oil and gas industry is that it's been around for so long, is that there's already kind of like accounting conventional technologies that you can use to measure and mitigate, emissions. So, for example, with, these flare stacks, you already have to take measurements, have to show how much you're burning. As we all know in the Bitcoin mining space at this point, these flare stacks tend to be pretty inefficient.
Yeah.
It seems like every time we learn more about methane, it's always bad news. But yeah, Bitcoin is this really just novel technology that can monetize and mitigate methane emissions, turn this waste into money, into a globally liquid currency.
People can use it and get a benefit out of it rather than just.
Absolutely.
And so do you see it as something you guys have been doing this for how long now?
So we're actually just about at our 2-year anniversary.
Okay.
SPP has been around since before Elon Musk tweeted and sent the whole Bitcoin ESG world into chaos. We've been working on this cool problem.
That's great. Wait, and you guys are up to how much of the hash rate now?
So we have signed agreements with between 11 and 13% of global hash rate. We announced publicly a pilot with CleanSpark earlier this year. That was pretty exciting. We did our first pilot transaction with them. Right now, we're in the process of onboarding all these Bitcoin miners onto the platform. That means verifying their energy data, their clean energy consumption data. We're developing pool integrations. So I would say the 2 big items on our agenda in the coming months is how do you automate this process? How do you get miners to just basically upload the data or connect the data and then immediately get paid for using clean energy? And then on the second piece is how do you bridge the institutional investors and asset managers? How do you bring them into the space? How do you increase that adoption and create a 2-sided market?
So let's take a step back. When a lot of these miners have Bitcoin that's already on their balance sheet, that it hasn't gone through this process, that they're trying to tap into the capital markets, some of the ESG funds that have the ESG mandates, how are they going about doing that?
Sure. Well, there's actually 2 pieces to this question. Different miners have different treasury strategies. Miners like Hut 8 are like insane hodlers, like really.
We love them.
Insane in a good way. Like Sue Ennis and like Jamie, like amazing treasury strategies. They've got a war chest of Bitcoin on the balance. Marathon also has like a crazy impressive, hodl strategy. And again, these different strategies have different advantages and disadvantages. Some miners, sell on a regular basis. Some hodl. Different solutions work for different strokes for different folks, right?
They have different expertise.
Yeah, and like there's different purposes, right? Now, one of the proposed solutions in the past, I think Kevin O'Leary maybe was sort of proposing this, is what if you could buy Bitcoin that was mined from a sustainable miner, and which came from a sort of sustainable energy source, and basically hold that Bitcoin on your balance in perpetuity. Now, the problem with that is that it disrupts fungibility, because if you're saying that this
Kevin O'Leary coin. That was someone was giving that hard Bitcoin Miami. I don't know, was that
Kevin O'Leary? Was that somebody actually proposing that?
They were joking. Is Kevin O'Leary? It's like you want a Kevin O'Leary coin for Bitcoin. Yeah, that's what you're trash.
Which if there was a market for a Kevin O'Leary coin, power to you, right? We're all about free markets, voluntary market-based mechanisms. We're conscious capitalists. But the thing about Bitcoin is that it has to be fully fungible. Right? I can't say that this Bitcoin's green and this one's not green. So that's the problem that we've solved for. If you are BlackRock or MicroStrategy or Tesla and you want to hold Bitcoin on your balance in a way that complies with conventional, ESG metrics or climate targets, or you just want to hold Bitcoin in a verifiably sustainable way so that somebody can look at your books and, it's all transparently done, that's what this solution is for. So if you're a Bitcoin miner and you're just selling your Bitcoin into the market, whether it be, OTC or on an exchange, power to you. Again, we're not policing or coercing anybody. It's an entirely market-based mechanism. Our ultimate goal is to change the narrative around Bitcoin and also drive the clean energy transition through Bitcoin mining, which I personally believe is one of the greatest energy poverty alleviation technologies that's ever existed.
You're preaching to the choir. I'm a really easy audience for this. It's really the audience, the like the New York Times article, right, where they're pushing hard against this. You have to look at what their perspective is. So what is it that say the New York Times, I know you're going to be looking at this a little bit more in depth. What is it that they're getting wrong? What is it that people typically get wrong that you think?
So what's fascinating about the New York Times article is that for the most part,
well, let's take a step back. I don't know if we described the New York Times article.
Oh yeah, the New York Times article, there was a long, 6-month investigative report on Bitcoin mining operations in the US, largely looking at data from, publicly available data from miners. I don't think that the journalist actually interacted with the miners themselves to ask them to supply data, which if he did, the results could have been quite different.
Much different.
But essentially, what I take issue with in the article is that it applied an accounting convention that nobody uses. So it used what's called marginal emissions accounting, which, to sort of put a long story short,
you lost me. So.
Yeah, no, we don't have to go into the whole nuances of like energy emissions accounting and all that stuff. But essentially, there's different ways to evaluate whether or not you are buying and using clean energy. Now, no other industry in the world, as far as I know, applies this marginal emissions analysis to the industry. What pretty much everybody does, and is in line with the greenhouse gas protocol, which is sort of the universal emissions, accounting standard, is you have what's called market-based accounting. That means I buy energy, and then I buy the associated number of either RECs, I have the PPA, GEOs, whatever the case may be. I buy energy, and then I also buy clean energy attribution. Now, Google, Amazon, Meta, running data centers, they're not being forced to abide by this marginal emissions accounting standard, which is, by the way, not to say that it's wrong in every scenario. It just doesn't make sense to apply it to this particular use case. But what's also really key is because the two different accounting conventions, market-based and marginal emissions, they use different data points. Like if you take a miner like CleanSpark, right? CleanSpark has gone through a third-party audit with us. We know for a fact that they are using, clean energy. They are a clean energy miner, like 100% clean energy, 95 or 100%. You could check.
Clean air, by the way.
Sure.
Does that include?
So in terms of the sources?
Yes.
Sure. Well, we include hydro, nuclear, renewables like solar and wind, geothermal, waste gas.
Okay.
I mentioned the waste gas pilot with Crusoe. So really what broadly speaking in the climate community, people consider clean energy or low carbon sources of power. Those are the ones that we want.
Okay, and CleanSpark is using, that's what they're using.
So CleanSpark is using clean energy, right?
Okay.
And they're a publicly traded company. They're going to be probably one of the most, if not the biggest, publicly traded miners by the end of the year. They're on a tear.
Marathon's really not going to...
Well, they're not going to love what I just said. No, but listen, Marathon too. Listen, all these miners, all the publicly traded miners, should also be very conscious of this because there's these top-down disclosures that they're going to have to be concerned with. The New York Times comes out and says that these miners, and I happen to know Marathon as well, is also buying clean energy, not by the convention that the New York Times used. If the New York Times applied this convention to any industry, everybody would fail, right? CleanSpark, I know for a fact because we've seen the data, is using clean energy. But how does that compute with the New York Times article that says that they're using 90% fossil fuels? It doesn't. Again, it's the things we choose to care about. How do we increase transparency, credibility in the space? We want to see Bitcoin mining as a mature, sophisticated industry that's additive to the grid and the clean energy transition. The way we do that is we look at these conventional standards for other industries, we meet and exceed them, and then we just show the world that Bitcoin mining is doing that.
That's great. Is there anything that we didn't touch on?
Oh man,
we're running late in the day.
Yeah.
Consensus. I feel bad. I feel like we're
I mean, we can
not
talk
doing
about
the
this for
justice.
hours.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's always a million and one things to talk about.
Oh, you guys are doing the middle process of doing you guys are doing a raise right now, right?
We are doing a raise.
So if anybody's interested,
yeah.
not
Not anybody. Strategic investment.
anybody. So you're in the process of doing a raise right now. What does that look like?
So I don't lead our fundraising efforts, but yeah, if anybody wants to learn more, they're happy to reach out to us. My email, you could sort of reach out to me is
What is your email?
Elliot, Elliot, at sustainablebtc.org. But in terms of the types of investors we're looking for, we sit at this really interesting intersection of, climate energy, Bitcoin, and traditional finance. So again, we want to increase adoption of Bitcoin. We would love input from all these different groups. So climate tech VCs, traditional financial players that want to, sort of help Bitcoin become a climate positive asset, Bitcoin native funds that want to sort of join us and increase adoption. And then a fourth column that I would love to see is energy companies. I think we talked about this in Austin. I think energy companies, utilities, are all going to be mining Bitcoin in the coming years, right? It's just a complementary technology to what they already have, especially on intermittent sources.
I think that's a recurring theme that keeps popping up with a lot of the miners. For sure. I think a lot of the miners that have been in the space for a long time, they recognize that, then they see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I personally think that probably 25%, probably 20% of global hash rate is going to come from these, large utility scale energy companies in the next couple of years. It makes perfect sense.
They will be their own buyer.
They will be their own buyer. Exactly. That's really the solution.
I didn't make that up, by the way.
Oh, I really like it.
That's Shannon White's over at Compass. He's the one that did that.
Shannon. But anyway, that's a great line. But Yeah, our array is really exciting. I'd love for like energy companies as well to kind of see this as an opportunity, not only to build out their own, business models and improve their own bottom lines, but also improve the grid, improve resiliency of the grid. How do you monetize energy that's like otherwise wasted? But yeah, if they want to learn more, we have our updated websites coming out tomorrow. Folks can reach out to our team if they're interested in working with us, investing in us, talking to us. We're always happy to nerd out on Bitcoin and climate.
It is a really, when people like to put it in either or buckets, it's not something that they necessarily connect together. So when you're talking about intersecting traditional finance, traditional financial instruments, mandates, ESG, and Bitcoin mining, I think
all the buzzwords, throw them all together.
The first time that I heard that, I was like, what are you doing? Like, it's kind of throws you for a loop a little bit. So it's really cool to pull that niche and
yeah, absolutely,
kind of dig into that a little bit.
It's an education piece too, right? I mean, not just, we don't just have to educate, the Senator Warrens or, the New York State government. Like, this is a global learning process about what Bitcoin is, what it's not, and what it can do. So
what do you think that, final question, we'll let you go, but what do you think that all the parties need to do to work together? Where is it that people need to be on the same page that they're not on the same page right now?
So one of the big areas that I think is really critical, and to sort of to quote Satoshi, is proof of work. Not just proof of work as a consensus mechanism for, securing the Bitcoin network, but proof of work and sustainability. Like, Bitcoin miners are making green claims. They should be happy to back it up. We as Bitcoiners, we believe you should not trust, you should verify. And we should be eager. Like, if all these Bitcoin miners are doing this powerful, important work in supporting the grid, supporting the energy transition, we should be transparent and shout it from the rooftops. So I think, having the data layer for that, which is what we're building, having that data and transparency to show the efforts of Bitcoin miners in clean energy procurement and consumption and development, that's going to be really key. And then I think also policy is just going to be so important, and that's why, the Texas Blockchain Council is so important.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Appreciate the shout.
I mean, Texas is, a hub, right? It's, 30% of global Bitcoin mining, something crazy like that.
Yeah, no, I should know all these stats. Lee's gonna stone me for not knowing these stats, but it is we've tried to adopt it. We've tried to help facilitate with both the mining side and then also from the legislation side. Yeah, because we do see it as a legislation. If you don't have that legislative piece, if you don't have a representative, someone else is having that conversation that doesn't have the interest of the miners and the energy companies and trying to get everybody on the same page with it.
Agree 1,000%. I mean, at the end of the day, advocacy is very important, right? We should defend the industry, defend it especially from attacks that are, unwarranted or misinformed or disinformed. But there's so much education that needs to happen. Like, as I'm sure it is for you, working in the space, it's like drinking from a fire hose. You learn more and more every single day.
You never know enough, and then you miss a day on Twitter, and you're like 2 weeks behind it.
What ordinals? What is this crazy new? Like, there's so much innovation happening in the space. Education is just going to be important. Like, there's this Ted Lasso is like, the TV show. There's this one scene where he talks about you shouldn't be be curious, not judgmental. So I think if more people are curious about Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining instead of being judgmental, I think that'll not only help the industry, but it'll help the climate, it'll help the political climate. It's good for everybody.
Yeah, the curious, that's a good way to end that is, being curious. Let's figure out how to, peel back what we're initially thinking. And after we have that conversation, a lot of stuff comes down to miscommunication.
1,000%, yeah.
You're looking at two sides of the same coin and arguing about it and not trying to wrap it and put it together. So it sounds like you guys are trying to lead the discussion on that front with
we're doing our best, yeah.
We're working hard at it. So
hopefully working with the TBC to advance that effort.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate it. We're going to look forward to having you as a member, as an executive member, and at the summit.
maybe after the raise.
After the raise, no. Well, thanks for stopping by today. I really appreciate it. All right.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Take care.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. We had a great time here at Consensus. At the Texas Blockchain Council, we are striving to be the nexus between traditional industries, banking, finance, legal, energy, and the digital asset industry. So we want to help you get your brand in front of those kinds of companies with B2B opportunities. Reach out to us if that's of interest for membership or for sponsorship at the summit. Hope to see you there in November in Fort Worth. Thanks again. We look forward to seeing you at the summit.